Good afternoon, everyone. In the event that a fire alarm sounds, please remain seated in the auditorium until directed by a Springmore staff member on when and how to exit. Please exit in an orderly fashion and do not use the elevators. And once outside, go to a red pole. If you have not already done so, please take just a moment to pull that cell phone out and either turn it off or silence it so that you will not interrupt the program once the program begins. I would like to now call this meeting to order of the Residents Association and welcome you to the Residents Association meeting. And it's good to see so many of you here today, and we hope that we have a large number also watching on 1341. At this time, I would like to ask, are there any new residents who are attending a residents meeting for the first time? If so, please raise your hand. Right here. If you would, give your name and your room number and where you're from.
Caroline McCall, 1409 from Raleigh.
Lee Strader, 1409, Raleigh.
He is my husband.
We got
Or.
Hold it close to you and speak straight into it.
Gloria Saunders from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Rick Saunders, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Well, welcome to all of you for being here, and we hope that we have a lot on 1341 who are new residents who are watching also. Welcome to Springmore. I would like at this time to call Brad Dilda, our Executive Director, to give us some information about the 2026 budget. Brad?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be pretty brief so we don't take any time away from our presenter. But I did want to give you an update. 2026 budget, I will be presenting tomorrow to the Board of Directors for the final approval. As you know, as we do every year, we meet individually with each department head and get their input on expenses. And then Jessica and Dee and I will kind of get together and make a decision based off of their input. Then we provide a preliminary budget to the Management Advisory Committee, which is a group of residents that I think Ms. Walton is going to talk about here shortly. They're kind of what they do and their role, and we get their feedback. And then finally, we meet with RLA, our management company, and get their input and feedback. And all that has been done, so we are now ready to present it to the board. I expect they'll have some input too, and then we'll go through that and get their approval tomorrow. And hopefully by the end of this week, we'll have everything composed and ready to send out all the information to everyone. And then, as you know, the next Residents Association meeting in September, I will be presenting a little bit, but mostly Dee will be up here to give you the rundown of the highlights of the budget and answer any questions that you may have at that time. So you should have about a month to kind of review it and then get your questions in to Ms. Walton and the MAC team, and we'll be up here to answer them next month. So thank you, and if I don't see you before, I'll see you a month from now, and you can have all the good questions for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Now Susan Waldron will come up and tell us a little bit about the role of the Management Advisory Committee in the budgetary process.
Good afternoon. Is this right? Good. Well, the Management Advisory Committee, as you know, accepts questions in March related to any concerns that people have about what happens, what's going on here at Springmore, and we prepare those for management to answer at our March meeting. And then in June, the Management Advisory Committee receives the preliminary budget. And we look over that, go over that very carefully. We meet with all the different department heads and have lots of questions about any changes that are made in the budget and why they are, and get justifications. And then know anything that we know as residents from the things that we hear and the things that we know ourselves and the things we hear from other members, then we can ask questions that would answer to get answers for those things, and then we make recommendations to management for anything that we think is pertinent from our standpoint. And once the budget is finalized, then you will be getting a memo from me and from the committee that says, please submit your questions. There's a time frame to submit your questions about the budget. This is not general questions. This is about the budget. If you have general questions, you can talk with Brad individually about those. You can sign the questions that you submit to us or not. You're not required to own your question. If you don't own your question, and there's some reason that we can't really answer it in the meeting, then you won't hear back from us because we don't know who you are. So if you sign it, then we can get back with you on anything or follow up to ask for more clarification before management sees it so that they can really answer what you're asking about. But so it is important. It's nice if you send those in on time. It's nice if they're typed up or if they're sent as an email. We also accept handwritten things. So whatever will work for you so that you get your questions in so that they can be answered by Brad and the rest of the management team in September at the September meeting. So we'll look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Susan. So what you've just been told is to be on the lookout within the next week for the proposed budget from Brad and from a memo from Susan indicating that you needed to respond if you have some specific questions about the budget to the Management Advisory Committee, which we will then pass on to management so that those questions can be answered at the September meeting. At this time, I will call on Jessica Pagan, Assistant Executive Director, who is going to introduce a staff member and also give us some information about several ongoing and upcoming activities for August. Jessica.
Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I wanted to introduce our new Director of Outpatient Clinical Services. Many of you do know Kelsey Sloan, who's been with us for the last a little over 4 years here at Springmore. She served in several different capacities as an RN in supportive living and most recently as an RN in the clinic. I'm sure that many of you have had direct interactions with her, but we're really pleased to be able to have an opportunity to promote within when we're able to. And Kelsey really has shown a true dedication and commitment, not only to Springmore, but to the residents and to the staff. And for those that haven't met her, I thought it would be nice for her to come so you could see her face to put with her name. And Kelsey is definitely available to each of you as a service here at Springmore, and we know that she's absolutely delighted for her new role. So welcome again, Kelsey. Okay, well, the month of August is bringing some exciting events here at Springmore, and I just wanted to highlight some of the events that we do have through Pathways and be able to share for those of you that maybe haven't had an opportunity to look at what's going on in August. Again, I know that you all have the Pathways calendar, and you can see all the specific events and the details related to. So I just wanted to highlight our 4th annual Springmore School Supply Drive. For those of you that didn't know, Springmore is proud to continue the tradition of giving back to the community by hosting a school supply drive for 2 nearby elementary schools. That's Lead Mine Elementary and Lynn Road Elementary Schools. There are collection bins located at both North and South Village. This will continue through August the 18th. I encourage you to participate if you're able to be able to give back to our local elementary schools, and the supplies that are listed are the supplies that the schools have stated could be most useful for the children for the school year. So please take advantage if you're able to participate with that. Also, we're looking to bring together veterans in our community to share stories, support one another, and build connections. We will be having our first Veteran Social on August the 25th at 2 o'clock. You do have to register for this social event, but if you're a veteran or if there's other residents that are veterans in our community, I do encourage that you have them attend this special event. Again, we want to highlight our veterans and give opportunities to bring them together. And this is the first of many events that you'll see in the future. So please share that. And then lastly, we do have our End of Life series that began last Wednesday and will continue every Wednesday for the month of August. This is Choices and Planning for End of Life. It's a very educational series. There's many speakers that are going to be coming. It will be shared on 1341 each Wednesday, and it will be recorded. Unfortunately, last Wednesday there was a glitch, and it wasn't recorded, but we'll do our best to make sure that it is moving forward. This Wednesday, we will have an attorney and social worker. Her name is Alyssa Huffman. She will be talking about advanced directives and legal rights at end of life here in North Carolina. She'll be answering a lot of the burning questions that many of our residents have. So I encourage you to attend in person if you have specific questions that you'd like to ask her while she's here. On August the 20th, Charlotte will be coming back to speak about hospice and palliative care, specifically what that looks like here at Springmore, just to be able to give a little bit of peace of mind of end-of-life services and the capability and support that we have here at Springmore. And lastly, on August the 27th, Dr. Andrews, who is a psychologist, will be speaking about coping with loss and aging. Again, we hope that we'll have a good amount of attendance. Again, this is a really important series that we feel like you will all find beneficial. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. It's now time for the program portion of the Residents Association meeting, so I call to the podium our Vice President, Barbara Smith. Barbara?
Thank you, Jim, and thank you all for being here. I know it's kind of a gloomy day, but it's nice that you're out and here. Very interesting program today with what I think we are all thankful to have is the Salvation Army. If you know anything about them, when it happens and people are needed, they're there. Today, I want to introduce a special person that has ties to Springmore, Mr. Van Rhodes. He enjoyed a 40-year career as a systems analyst and database designer, utilizing software from the SAS Institute, which is in Cary. He specialized in demand chain logistics for retail companies across the country. This part is not my favorite thing to say about him. He's a nice guy, but he went to UNC. I'm a Wolfpacker. But he graduated in 1976, and no kidding, I had kids to go there. So, originally from Raleigh, the son of Barbara and Alan Page. And we remember our dear Barbara that left us, and she and I talked about Van before she left us. He resides in Newport News, Virginia, with his wife, Ann, who was Ann Farr, who happened to be the Farr of Ren Farr, men's clothes, boys' clothes, if you remember that, if you're a Raleigh native at all. Now retired, he keeps busy giving back to the community through various volunteer activities, such as the Salvation Army, Rotary, Bible study, and fellowship. He's an elder in his church. I introduce to you Van Rhodes.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for that very nice introduction. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. So, That was a great bio that she gave on me, but I'd like to give you a little bit more background on myself and my wife, Ann, to establish our Raleigh bona fides. We're both Raleigh born and bred. I went to Sanderson High, and Ann went to Broughton. Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I heard. We both graduated from UNC, proud UNC, and Ann went on to UNC Law School. This is us. And as Barbara said, Ann's dad, Arthur Farr, owned and operated Ren Farr's boys' clothing store, which was one of the first stores in Cameron Village, opening in 1948. I think this is pictures from the 60s. I'm sure many of you, at least those with sons, remember Mr. Farr, because over the decades he probably outfitted half the boys in Raleigh. Later, he and Ann's brother, Alan, expanded into a men's store called the Club Shop, which operated through the 1990s. My grandfather, Bern Bullard, my mom's, Barbara's dad, was CEO of Taylor Biscuit Company. They were on Hillsborough Street, almost to Cary, back in the 50s and 60s, and later he became a real estate Raleigh developer. So that's a little bit about us. Our families have deep ties, deep roots in North Carolina and Raleigh. But our reason for being here today is to tell you about the Salvation Army and its history, but also about the Salvation Army of the Virginia Peninsula. Well, why there? For the past 40 years, Newport News is where we've lived, and our connection to the Salvation Army began there. Each Salvation Army command has a local advisory board with a cross-section of business leaders and local government officials. Ann and I both served on the board there for many years now. The board is kind of the local continuity that the Army makes use of, since they like to rotate their officers around to different commands periodically. And this presentation was originally done back in December for my local Rotary Club. The Rotaries in Newport News assist at Christmas time with ringing the bell outside local businesses to help raise funds for our local command. I know the ones in Raleigh do the same thing. I have no doubt of that. We particularly like it because there's always intense competition for which Rotary can raise the most money. One of them, though, has been cheating by when they find out how much they're short, somebody writes a check and tosses it in. The other reason I gave it was because our local Salvation Army commander had just joined our Rotary, and it seemed to be a good time to do a little education on how the money that they raise for us is put to good use, especially in our area. I forget exactly how Barbara got this. I think it was because my mom was bragging on me and Barbara was looking for somebody to come and do this. But my conundrum was, how do I do this for an audience that might not know that much about our area and how the Salvation Army fits in? So my attempt here today is to tell you about the Army, where its origins, what are its origins, and how did it come to America, and what's been its mission over the years. And then to educate you a bit on the amazing history of Hampton Roads and how the Salvation Army has been part of that history since 1898. And finally, to tell you about the Army's emergency disaster relief services and our part in it, and how one of our Rotarians caused our local command to be present in the aftermath of the 9/11 atrocity at the Pentagon. So first, let's go back to the very beginning. William Booth was the founder of the Salvation Army. He established it in England in 1865. And growing up, his first job was at 13 as an apprentice in a pawnbroker shop, of all things. Well, this exposed him to how bad the poor had it in England. He once said that East End London about it was that it was absolute hell on earth. At 15, he came to faith in Christ and started attending the Methodist Church. He basically educated himself and became a Methodist preacher. And he had a real heart for the poor and also a real hatred of dirt, squalor, and suffering. And he began arguing two things with the higher-ups in the Methodist Church. First, that the poor needed to hear the gospel of Christ just as much as their comfortable middle-class parishioners did. But second, they also needed someone to help them with their material needs, arguing that not very many people are going to be very interested in hearing about the gospel of Christ when their stomachs are empty. He couldn't convince the church to move in this direction, so after 9 years of ministry, he broke loose from the Methodist Church and became an independent revivalist. And he founded at Whitechapel the Christian Mission, which in 1878 became the Salvation Army. Well, why did he call it an army? Well, it was to emphasize its mission and structure. He wanted to convey a sense of discipline, purpose, and organization in their efforts to help the poor and the needy. And as a quasi-military structure, they helped to organize and mobilize volunteers effectively, and it symbolized that they were fighting against the social evils like poverty and injustice. And his mantra became soup, soap, and salvation. He worked to remedy poverty by means of homes for the homeless, rescue homes for prostitutes, homes for released prisoners, legal aid for the poor, and practical help for alcoholics. Drunkenness was a terrible scourge among the poor. Well, this was revolutionary in England at the time. He got a lot of pushback for this, especially by the gin merchants and the pimps. You know, social services for the poor at that time was really in its infancy. Many people actually felt that the poor deserved their station in life. But slowly the people of England got behind him and support started pouring in. His wife, Catherine Booth, was known as the Army Mother. She was a co-founder of the Army and an evangelist in her own right. And like him, she passionately believed that loving God meant loving people through action. Now, their seventh child, Evangeline, was also a gifted speaker and leader. She was so good that she was sent by her dad to start the Army in America and Canada. And she worked here for 30 years and eventually became an American citizen. She had amazing organizational skills and a real passion for the mission of the Salvation Army. Well, in 1906, San Francisco suffered a really catastrophic earthquake and subsequent fires that burned down much of the city. Several Army properties in San Francisco were damaged or destroyed. The area headquarters building burned to the ground. They were down but not out. They started to help. They didn't have any organization, so they just improvised. They opened up refugee centers in Oakland and food kitchens in San Francisco. Well, Commander Booth traveled to San Francisco and saw that what they were doing, and the light bulb went off. She headed to Chicago and New York to support them with massive fundraising efforts. And that year, the Army spent its entire national budget of $4 million for relief efforts in San Francisco. And it was out of this experience that she founded the Emergency Disaster Services Program and found new ways to fund it. Well, when America entered World War I in April 1917, she placed the entire Salvation Army in the USA on a war service basis. And she organized a group of 11 hand-picked young women officers and sent them as an advance guard to France to lift the spirits of the soldiers. More officers soon followed, and they started Salvation Army restrooms and hostels wherever the troops were stationed, some right at the front lines, where the women were in danger from shells and gas. And at first, their plan was that they would just be doing the same things that they did at home. They'd sing some music to relax the troops. They'd hold religious services to keep their minds and their souls refreshed. But what these guys really needed was someone to relieve their homesickness, to be essentially surrogate moms to these guys. And some of these ladies were barely 18 years old. Well, while they were serving, they noticed that the soldiers' food was pretty bad. And as the war dragged on, it got worse. They no luxuries at all. They knew they had to do something, but what? Each lady had been given a gas mask and a revolver. That was pretty much it. Nothing for cooking. So 4 of the ladies kind of took stock of what they had. What do we got? Okay, we got lard. We got some sugar. We got some flour. Well, what are we going to do with that? Donuts. We'll make donuts. First day, they fried donuts in a soldier's helmet. They turned out about 150, but soon they got better. And eventually, on a typical day, they could cook 2,500 donuts and 250 gallons of hot cocoa. And the other 2 served it to the soldiers. They used shell casings and wine bottles as rolling pins, handing them out to the men. And the troops loved them. Demand for donuts skyrocketed all along the front. And the men started writing home about the donut girls. Who? Word spread across the U.S., and donations to the Salvation Army came pouring in. Have you heard the saying, dollars to donuts? This is where it came from. Well, they had no idea what was happening back home. They just wanted to serve the men. But they became icons. People were even writing songs about them. They're cover girls on the Saturday Evening Post and even Cosmopolitan. But what they were showing was that even in dark times, even in really painful times, there's always that ray of hope. And sometimes it looks like a donut. Well, this continued in World War II. They were a bit better organized, and the first mobile canteens made their appearance. And back home, the Army expanded its mission of hope through use of mobile canteens for disaster relief, deploying them wherever there was a need, sometimes with a little help from our friends. Okay, so what about Newport News? And how did a couple of dedicated North Carolinians like us end up there? Well, fresh out of law school, Ann landed a dream job at Newport News Shipbuilding in Newport News, Virginia, which builds nuclear aircraft carriers. I was working here in Raleigh for Carolina Power and Light as a programmer in their IT department. So when we got married, I relocated there and found IT work in the area. Now, Newport News is part of the greater Hampton Roads area known as Tidewater, Virginia. It's a wonderful place to live, especially if you're a history buff like both of us are, because the whole area absolutely reeks of American history. You have the Yorktown battlefield, where we kicked British butt in 1781. This is Redoubt number 9 that the British held, and this is where Alexander Hamilton and his troops stormed the redoubt, took it over, and that was it for Cornwallis. We also have Colonial Williamsburg that John Rockefeller Jr. renovated starting back in 1926. And we have the Jamestown settlement, whose original stockade, by the way, was finally found in 1994 after 150 years of searching. And that caused real excitement in our area when they finally found it. The name Newport News, by the way, is named after Christopher Newport, and he was the sea captain who brought the first Jamestown settlers to the area. The name shows up in the 1619 register of the Jamestown Company, making it one of the oldest place names in the country. And also at the confluence here of the James and Elizabeth Rivers, the Battle of Hampton Roads took place in 1862 between the Monitor and Merrimack ironclads. And a North Carolina connection to that, the Monitor was found where it sank off the North Carolina Outer Banks in 1863 by a team from Duke University in 1974. Well, it ended back up in Newport News when it was brought up in 2002, just about 2 miles from the original battlefield. And there's a world-famous Mariners Museum there which houses the turret and other artifacts brought up. And conservation work on it's been going on for many years now. But some engineers from the shipyard came out and built a full-size replica that we can enjoy. We also have Fort Monroe, an 1812 fort built to guard the entrance to Hampton Roads at a place called Old Point Comfort. And another North Carolina connection, that's where Zebulon Vance was incarcerated there with Jefferson Davis after the end of the war between the states. Or as one of my grandmothers used to like to put it, the late unpleasantness. So the area has an amazing history, and that's just scratching the surface. There's a lot of current history going on. There's numerous military bases. You got Langley Air Force Base that's been there since 1916. And the Norfolk Naval Base, the largest naval base in the world. That was actually started by the British in 1767. Both are continuing to make history now with units from this area deployed into the Middle East. And the NASA Langley Research Center is here. It's also started in 1916 and then got folded into NASA during the space race. If you saw the movie Hidden Figures, that's where mathematician Katherine Johnson worked. And by the way, her daughter is an engineer at Newport News Shipbuilding today. So like I said, it's a fun place to live. There's something going on all the time, whether it's aircraft carriers coming and going or fighter jets overhead. As the Air Force likes to say, pardon our noise, it's the sound of freedom. So how did the Salvation Army get there and why? Well, the new city of Newport News was started by Collis P. Huntington. Does anybody here know who he is? Know anything about who he is, what he did? I'll give you a hint. The Transatlantic Railroad. As a young man, Huntington traveled throughout the north and southeast coast as a Yankee dry goods peddler. And eventually his partner sent him to California to sell equipment to the 49ers during the gold rush. And he made far more selling supplies to them than most of them made panning for gold. And eventually he and 3 others joined together to form the Central Pacific Railroad and built the western half of the Transcontinental Railroad, getting filthy rich in the process. And he was reputed to be the most ruthless of the 4, which says a lot considering Leland Stanford was one of the others. By the way, if you want to read a good book about this, Stephen Ambrose's book is a very good starting point. He has some extremely pithy things to say about Huntington, which I enjoyed quite a bit. Well, what's his connection to Newport News? In his Yankee peddler travels as a young man, one of the places he came across was Newport News Point about 1839 or so, which he pigeonholed in his mind because he felt that there were huge opportunities for some maritime commerce there. And after the Transcontinental Railroad, he bought the bankrupt Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad, and his goal was to connect it to the Atlantic Ocean, and he achieved this in 1881 when the C&O reached the mouth of the James River in Newport News. He basically built the entire city from a sleepy little village. He owned coal mines in Huntington, West Virginia, and the coal from these mines was delivered to his docks there in Newport News. The coal terminal is still here to this day. Please don't tell EPA. We don't think they know about it. But he had no capacity to repair the ships that transported the coal. So in 1886, he created the Chesapeake Dry Dock and Construction Company and used it to repair his coal colliers. Well, a year later, he renamed it to Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock because he wanted the city to have a major industry. So he set about making it happen. So Huntington, the railroad magnate, and Huntington, the coal mine magnate, became Huntington, the shipyard magnate. Their first new ship was built in 1891 with the tugboat Dorothy, which sits on the site today. And his directive, which became the company's official motto, was, "We shall build good ships here, at a profit if we can, at a loss if we must, but always good ships." And that's still their motto today. By 1896, the yard received its first U.S. Navy contract to build the USS Kentucky and Kearsarge. Thousands of men were hired, and that's where the Salvation Army got involved. Although there were thousands of jobs, many more people came to the area to seek jobs than were available. A lot of folks from northeastern North Carolina, which really needed jobs bad. Many of them then were stuck in poverty. And even some of the individuals that were already working at the yard, they just could not make ends meet. So the Army set up camp right outside the shipyard and immediately started feeding and even providing shelter later on for the individuals that were working and needed it. So that's how we got started there in 1898, 127 years ago. And we've been there ever since, helping folks in need throughout the area. World War I and World War II, of course, had a major impact on the area. The shipyard expanded hugely during those times, building hundreds of major warships and, of course, aircraft carriers. But it also became a major staging area for troops going to Europe. And we're reminded of that, it triggered a memory of another historical connection to the Army there that I ran across years ago. This one came from the author William Manchester, who he wrote an autobiography about his time as a Marine in World War II called Goodbye Darkness. And he related a story about his dad, who was wounded in World War I. Facilities for caring for the wounded were pretty primitive when he got back to Norfolk to convalesce, once he was mostly healed. But they laid him out in the field with basically minimal care. And there were relief organizations there to help men with some comforts, but they had to pay for it. Well, he didn't have any money, so he entered the Salvation Army. They would walk up and down the rows of men, handing out candy and cigarettes from buckets they carried, offering comfort and kindness, and asking for nothing in return. And Manchester said his dad, as long as he lived, never passed a Salvation Army kettle without giving a donation. So that's part of the legacy of the Army, who were right there throughout all those years. But that brings me to our most recent brush with history. We got our canteen in 2000. It's a 20-foot food truck with a full kitchen. Oops. A full gas oven, 6-burner stove, and a griddle for burgers and pancakes, and also a refrigerator with a generator to run it and keep the lights on. Fully equipped, we can cook and serve about 400 meals. Within a year after receiving our new canteen, disaster struck with the 9/11 terrorist attack. And like everyone else, we got caught flat-footed. The canteen wasn't stocked up, but nevertheless, one of our board members, a Rotarian named Cap Nielsen, dropped everything, found some volunteers, got organized, left late in the evening after work on the day of the attack. And without much in the way of supplies, they just jumped in the canteen and headed to Washington. And somewhere along the way, they stopped at a grocery store that was closed, but they saw somebody in there restocking. They knocked on the door, and when they told them what they were doing, the guy just opened the door up and said, "Come in, take whatever you want, no charge." So they just loaded up. And this is what they found on their arrival. What I'm showing you now are pictures that they took. They immediately set up and began cooking hot dogs and hamburgers. Some of the first responder teams have been working nonstop all day, and this was their first real meal since they started. Some of them ate and then lay down behind the canteen and grabbed an hour or two of sleep because nobody was leaving until the job was done. And for the next 3 days, they kept on cooking breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the first responders, making repeated trips for more supplies. After a day or two, a couple of other canteens showed up. Here's some more shots of the devastation. They stayed 3 days, working pretty much around the clock, and by then others were able to relieve them. Our pictures are kind of limited because the FBI showed up and confiscated Cap's camera, but they didn't ask whether he had any film in his pocket. And so he didn't volunteer the information, so that's what you see here. If there are any retired FBI agents, you can't get to him. He's already passed to the other side. So that was our latest opportunity. to be there at a crucial time in American history and to help out some real heroes. Well, since 9/11, we've participated in many disaster relief efforts, both local and distant. The National Army Command has extensive protocols in place to mobilize multiple commands to respond to a disaster based on its size. They quickly set up command structures. They coordinate with local sheriff, police, and churches, and other relief organizations like the Red Cross and the Baptist Relief Organization. And as time goes by, early volunteers are relieved and others brought in, along with additional supplies, basically from all over the place. But we don't just sit around and wait for disasters. We actively use the canteen several times a month for local relief efforts, doing street feedings for the homeless. We help out at retirement villages in the area, helping people of modest means stretch their budget with an extra meal. Here we're helping out with what in our area is known as Port and Night's Welcome. These are winter homeless shelters set up and run by community churches in Newport News and Hampton. During the COVID shutdown, we and the local food bank were the only relief organizations that were open. We enlisted the aid of several churches to cook food, and were able to take them to areas of Hampton and Newport News that were particularly hard hit during the shutdown. So of October 1st of last year, in response to Hurricane Helene, the Salvation Army Disaster Services in 7 southeastern U.S. states geared up to meet the needs of the community impacted by the storm. I wish I could say our canteen was deployed to western North Carolina, but it was actually sent to Georgia. But over the next month, it alone served 31,000 meals. You should have seen it when we got back. It was a mess. Our Captain Willis was horrified, and he immediately had it deep cleaned because he didn't want the board to see what had happened to it. Well, that was our canteen swan song. We were informed by divisional headquarters that our canteen had been deemed too old, and now the equipment was just too worn out to be deployed to remote locations. But we've been given a newer one, pretty much like the old, with a few more bells and whistles. We're confident that we can keep it going for another 20 years. And in so doing, we hope to continue the work that General Booth and his wife Catherine started over 150 years ago, providing soup, soap, and salvation to those in need, whoever they are and wherever they are. So that's who we are. We provided some brochures there for you if you would like to see anything or know anything more about it. We'd appreciate you asking questions, but next time you see a red kettle at Christmas here in Raleigh, please think about what you've seen today and consider supporting your local Raleigh command. And eat some donuts. Thank you. Any questions? Question?
Anybody has any questions?
Okay.
Dan will have the answers.
Okay.
Very thorough.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Van, you must have done a great presentation if you didn't have any questions, because usually this group will flood the speaker with all sorts of questions. And thank you very much for that informative program today. Let's do some door prizes. Van, if you will draw one red ticket. The number today, red ticket, is 026418. Oh, blue ticket. Blue ticket. Gosh. The last numbers are 0020. Blue ticket. Last numbers are 0020. The first numbers, I think, are 148. But these numbers are so small. Way back there.
Oh, silver. That's great. She never
All right, Brad has already indicated to you that our next meeting in September will be on the budget, and it will be primarily Dee presenting the actual budget itself. Be on the lookout for the budget. Be on the lookout for Susan's memo. There's something else you need to be on the lookout for also. At our next meeting, we will be electing the residents who will be the officers for the 2026 Executive Committee. The proposed slate of officers from the 2026 Nominating Committee will be posted on the bulletin boards in North Village, South Village, the portal, and also 1341. So please be on the lookout for this proposed slate later this week, because it will be posted sometime later this week, so that you will be aware of those who are being nominated for leadership in your Residents Association for next year. I want to thank all of you for coming today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting on Monday, September the 8th at 3 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned.